Good morning and welcome to this Friday in the 19th week of Ordinary Time. Today we have in Matthew's Gospel, this is the beginning of 19, a teaching about marriage that springs from a question on divorce. And here's what it says. Some Pharisees approached Jesus and tested him, saying, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any cause whatever?" Jesus said in reply, "Have you not read that from the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh? So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, man must not separate." They then said to him, "Why did Moses command that a man give the woman a bill of divorce and dismiss her?" Jesus said to them, "Because of the hardness of your hearts, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so." And he continues to go on to teach more about marriage and divorce, and even talks about celibacy in the end. It's an interesting, too, the reaction of the disciples. When they hear all this, they say, well, then it's better not to marry at all. And that's when Jesus goes on to speak about celibacy for the sake of the kingdom. I'll never forget in my 20s, I was now Catholic. I had converted at the age of 20, 21, and I was learning so much that was new. And I remember learning about the teaching of the church on marriage. And oh my goodness, when I first heard it, I thought, boy, I did not know this when I started dating in high school. And as I looked back, I thought, I probably wasn't ready to date at that time. And it raises the question, if we don't really understand marriage, if we don't understand God's plan for marriage, how do we know how to go about dating? How would we know how to even choose a partner for life? And so I saw clearly that I wasn't ready to start dating in high school at the time that I did. And of course, that's why so many get lost in this area and end up, making choices that they have to now carry into their adult life that they regret, that have wounded them in various ways. It's why so many choose the wrong person, and they end up living a very miserable life in their marriage. There's so many ramifications that come from not understanding marriage and God's plan for it. I think unless a person knows that and has studied it, they probably shouldn't be dating. Otherwise, it's very likely you'll get pretty confused and very lost. It's for this reason that the church always preserves and proclaims God's vision for marriage, God's original plan and intention. Even though there's a lot of brokenness in the world, the Lord does not want us to lose sight of what His plan is for this beautiful union. And that's why Jesus takes His listeners back to the beginning. They're trying to normalize the brokenness. They're living, without knowing it, in various forms of despair, where they do not think that anything beyond what they know is possible. All because they don't know Jesus. They don't know Him and what His coming and presence among us means. and the new horizons that he opens up and now makes possible by the power of his death and resurrection. Because we see in our human experience and in our own human life, there is plenty of brokenness in all relationships, not just in marriage. We see it in friendships. We see it trickling through family life. We see it in the different forms of consecrated life. We see it in priestly life. We see so much brokenness. And the reason for this Jesus gives is what? Because of the hardness of our hearts. In other words, the cause of all these broken relationships and the pain and the suffering that people live because of that is because of unredeemed sin. The sin that Jesus comes into the world precisely in order to redeem and heal. And so, regardless of where a person is right now, where you and I may be, and even if our past is a path of brokenness, of pain and suffering, the important thing to take away from this gospel is that when a person turns toward Christ, when we begin to open our lives and our fallen human natures to Jesus, that grace can allow us not only to make a new beginning, a fresh start, but with Jesus, we can now step into a future where there are now possibilities that before were not possible without Jesus. And Jesus goes on to even say that even renouncing marriage for the sake of the kingdom is even possible with him. So we have to be careful because we're seeing this in our own culture. A despair that has become so widespread that we see a culture giving up hope, like this crowd around Jesus, where we no longer can imagine anything better than what we know and what we see. And we fall into thinking that, yep, this is all there is. This is all the better it gets. And this can lead, as I said before, to a tendency then to just normalize the brokenness and the sin, just to accept it as normal. All because our culture does not know Jesus. Our culture does not understand, and in some cases does not accept the coming of Jesus and what his presence among us means, and what he did on the cross, and his resurrection. So, marriage, as God intended it, is only possible. Friendships, consecrated life, priestly life, any of these covenant, consecrated relationships are only possible to be lived within the power of the Spirit of God and the redeeming grace of Jesus Christ. And this is what Jesus now makes possible. For marriage to return to that covenant relationship that reflects the very love of God, that is an icon of the Trinity, of Trinitarian love and communion. Marriage can now be a sacrament to make visible the love of Jesus for his church, to make visible the sacrificial love of Christ for his bride, and the pure, wholehearted love of the bride for Christ, and the fruitfulness of children, and the fruitfulness of that marriage in so many other ways. It is so important that hope be awakened again, and that we find in Christ these new horizons, and to be able to imagine what is now possible again. So let's just pray. You know, certainly that we ourselves can continue to walk and to follow Jesus as he leads us through different kinds of healing, of merciful redemption, that he leads us into new relationships that can now reflect his original plan. Let's also pray for just those who are suffering still, those who are, working through a lot of pain because of the brokenness in themselves and in other people. There's so much need for healing, but Jesus brings that too. So God bless you. I want to let you know also that I will be away for a couple weeks. I'll give a reflection tomorrow on Saturday, but then after that there's going to be a 2-week break. But I want to let you know that they will resume again when I return from my little vacation. So God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.